Welcome back to Gentlemen, it's Isaiah holding it down here. We are back and better than ever, rocking the Gengar shirt, alright? That means we mean business here, okay? Today's topic, AI yet again on this YouTube channel, but more specifically, AI and CHAT GPT ending somebody's relationship. It was a fascinating read. It was a Substack that went viral, written by Lindsey. We're going to read the majority of it because it's a bit of a long one, and reading be hard sometimes. So if you hear me stutter, you hear me mess up, hey, I have a college degree, and I'm using it mildly. Either way, we're going to jump right into it. There might be, this is a fair warning, if you're expecting somebody to read something very seriously or to have an appealing voice, you're not getting that here, buddy. There's probably going to be random accents mixed in because for some reason, the way my brain operates is just refusal to talk like a normal human being. So we're going to jump right into it. This is once again a Substack online. I will probably link it in the description below if you want to read it yourself. It is titled, I stumbled across my boyfriend's CHAT GPT and it ended our relationship. I find out my now ex-boyfriend has been questioning his feelings and attraction to me in the most dystopian, laughable, modern way possible. CHAT GPT. Laid on his couch, midnight on a Friday. I was working late as he snoozed blissfully on my shoulder when my phone died in the heat of a client exchange. Shit, I mumbled, pivoting. I grabbed his laptop off the floor to run my final, fatigued, glassy-eyed client response through AI. So we're ranting about AI despite using AI pretty much daily for my job. Nonetheless, we move on, okay? As I powered his computer, his ChatGPT almost poetically was already front and center on the screen. As I copy and pasted my email, I peered to the left side of the screen, and that's when I saw in the sidebar a past chat titled Relationship Issues and Uncertainty. I stared at the words. Now here's where I am certain many people will piously tell me I dug my own grave. I invaded his privacy, that I never should have read what I read, that the man is allowed to share private thoughts with a robot he never intended for me to see. And of course, all that is true, but I dare you to come across your partner's ChatGPT and read those words. And not to unravel moral senses. I don't know what that was. And let me tell you, I wish that I never read what I did, if only because there is something uniquely humiliating about coming across someone's merciless, uncensored stream of consciousness about you, especially when that someone has been kissing you, sleeping beside you, introducing you to family, I hate myself, and making you feel chosen. All of us who embark on the quest of love move through relationships and intimacy believing maybe a tad foolishly, but also just humanely that a person who has chosen to be with you is happily viewing you in a forgiving light. That even when you are a difficult, messy, neurotic inconvenience, they still fundamentally are on your side. Good Lord, there's so many just details here. Shout out to the author. I probably should have taken some of this out. At first I clicked the chat assuming with morning annoyance that the focus would be about my cats. Sure, 3 cats had been an issue from the start. When I met, I had 1, but the time we actually went on a first date, I had acquired 2 more. Okay, they're rescues. We don't need to know the name. So I was already mentally prepared to heavy sigh at his usual concerns. Too many cats, too small space, too chaotic of a life, too much long-term feline commitment for a man who prizes order and peace and clean surfaces. Cats clean themselves. What are we talking? Vacuum, damn it. All right, so, oh, for the love, I was basically muttering as I clicked, either accept them or let's be done with this. But the first thing I saw was indeed not his cat complaint. It was ChatGPT's final response. From what you're sharing, you should consider ending the relationship. I froze. Oh, that's not where I thought this was going. I scrolled up to the beginning. Should I be in love after 3.5 months? My boyfriend began the conversation with his robot Frood. I don't know what that means. Maybe that's a term that Lindsey likes to use. My stomach dropped. The interference of that question so clearly and not in my favor that my hands grew clammy instantly. Doing the math, we were over 5 months in by this time. I read the conversation, so I immediately understood that this chat had happened weeks ago. Beside me, a line of drool slid down his cheek as he slept peacefully against the body I would soon learn had been privately workshopping concerns about with his robot. I kept reading. The conversation I understand soon enough would not go any better for me. Short sentences of nearly entirely unfavorable comments he laid out in his doubts, clipped almost clinical fragments, my lifestyle, my sensitivity, my past, my van, my online writing, my eating disorder history, my cats, and then I saw a sentence that would lodge itself in my brain with the force of shrapnel. Quote, well, the cats definitely, and then there's the whole attraction thing. The whole attraction thing? Damn, why are we here? Okay, that is, just before we continue on, that's enough. I'm good, all right? If you're in a relationship, you're not attracted to said person, I think that's enough to be like, you know what? 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, a year, probably time to call it quits. My ego evaporated on the spot. Look, it's not that I think I'm a dime. I'm a realistic lady, okay? But this man's entire love language, okay, I don't know what that is. Look, it's not that I think I'm a dime. I'm a realistic lady. But this man's entire love language was rooted in physical affection. It was quite literally the only type of love I felt certain from him. It was in the category in which I had felt the safest. It was the one thing I had not questioned because, of course, as a woman, I had already felt some of his other uncertainty intuitively, only I just thought it was about far less crucial aspects like cats. Okay, so side notes, sometimes the way this is written is clearly written for words, not for me to say. We progress, we chug along here as reading's very hard. I reread it over and over because I generally could not make my brain process. And yet there I was, inches from him, reading that in the back door of his own mind, he had been questioning what I assumed the most basic part of wanting someone, their looks. A few lines later came the body of it. I was too petite, too frail looking. Getting out of the shower, he noticed once. In the beginning, my hair looked damaged. This one made me extra salty, like, excuse me, sir? I had been on a European beach all summer, okay? I need keratin treatment? Christ! Give a girl a break! My eating disorder history made him worry about what would happen if I relapsed, and he lost all attraction? I was, in short, being methodically assessed, only there was no pro list. That was the part that floored me. Not that any concerns about my body or my past or personality, though that felt awful enough, but that in the privacy of his own thoughts, I was not being held in the warm and forgiving light I had imagined. I was not someone he adored. I was a set of liabilities, a ruminating amount of concerns, an accumulation of negative variables to be sorted and weighed and dissected through, and apparently alarmingly easy to summarize, or so it felt. There is something existentially jarring about seeing yourself rendered that way through someone else's eyes. You become humiliatingly aware that you are simply another person in the world, observable, discussable, reductible, not the heroine of a rom-com, not the sum total of your intentions and tenderness, but a body and a history someone else may find embarrassing, inconvenient, or hard to love. Then I read the line that I think I'll probably remember: to my grave. I'm just not proud of her. He repeated it with 3 dots. I'm not just proud of her. Then you should be considering end it, chat guide. No shit! As she posted to get somebody smoking, alright? As I finished the chat, adrenaline running, I wondered how many of these conversations are there. To my horror, I would find handfuls. Like those who relish in trauma porn, I could not peel myself away from the unfavorable things documented. When I was done, I sat there stunned into a kind of silence I didn't know what to do with. Too shocked for coherent thinking, too confused to feel anger, too shell-shocked to even evoke emotion. This man, I thought, looking at him asleep beside me, this man whose country I had just visited, whose family I had met, who I had left that trip feeling the utmost love for and to me. This man does not adore me. It seems that this man doesn't even really like me. I slid out under him carefully, gathered my shoes and chargers and little belongings I left around his house over the months and packed them into my purse in silence. It was eerie how calm I was, but I think there was a kind of calm the body enters when it has passed the point of immediate feeling and gone straight into evacuation mode. I left without a word. I drove home 1 a.m. in total silence, and by the time I got through the front of my door, the calls had already started. Where are you? What's going on? You okay?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I couldn't answer. Every inch of me lit with humiliation, every prideful cell in my body writhed in anger and shame. I would not show how hurt I was to this man. I did not want to offer him the intimacy of watching me react to what he had written. I turned off my phone. Half an hour later, his headlights up in my bedroom window. By then, rage I had initially stifled was now beginning to course through my body. The fact that his CHAT GPT, in its own way, made the whole thing feel even more grotesque and surreal. It was like accidentally reading someone's diary, except the diary was a fucking robot. Predisposed to agree with him, ready to take his cruel thoughts and shape them into something that sounded reasonable. I flinched, wondering how often and intensely he must have been mentally suffering with his concerns about me that he felt the need to use an AI to decipher them. I was all around horrified, and when he rang the doorbell incessantly, I opened the front door and hissed in a Gollum-esque voice, "Get the fuck out of here!" I think that's how it went. He looked terrified, truly bewildered. "What's going on?" he blurted in the doorway. In shaky voice, he paced back and forth. "What did I do?" He asked over and over. And when I said nothing, but instead turned my head as tears began to burn, he ran his hands through his hair, fell to his knees, grasping onto me. That's crazy. Going on your hands and knees like, please take me back and tell me. Like, brother, what do we... Relax in that moment. Oh, also, very super side note before we break this down, because there's still more to read. This is not like a 5-year relationship. This is a couple months, 5 months. Now I get it. Met the family. Things seem to be going well. I said we just both say, you know what? We're done. We don't need to keep doing this. We're good. There's not that much commitment. There's no need to force something that's just not there. 3.5 months. Okay, we'll continue. In that moment, I had the strangest flashback, a déjà vu. Years earlier, a different boyfriend had left me in our Boulder house full of our cats and 4 dogs we were watching, while our neighborhood was under a fire evacuation because he still wanted to go to some forest rave with friends. Emergency sirens down the street, smoke on the hill, and this absolute buffoon gives me a hug goodbye as my drawer hung open. He peels out of the driveway to go do party drugs in the woods with no Wi-Fi. I had left that boyfriend in a similar manner as this present situation, eerily calm, resigned. Once the fire warning ended, I waited till morning when I knew our friends would soon be back to pick up their dogs, and I grabbed our cat, packed everything I owned into my Honda Accord, shout out to Honda, left a note that I was done, and I walked out. I disappeared for days to a hotel nearby, responding only to a roommate to let her know I was fine, but didn't want to speak to him. When I finally chose to text back, some of those thousands of pleading texts later, he arrived at the hotel unshowered, unkempt, a sobbing mess, and he too crumpled to the floor. What does this woman have over these men? Clutching at my knees, begging for forgiveness through muffled pleas for our cats, who remain judgmentally staring from the hotel window. So, standing there on my porch now, watching yet another man unravel in the wreckage of his own emotional blockage, I felt not just hurt, but haunted by recognition. I had seen this movie before. I'd already lived this plot. How many times, I wondered, does a woman have to stand in the aftermath of a man's lack of emotional wherewithal, and then he has to comfort him because the consequences become real? I peered down at him. This man, a strong man, a brilliant one too, respected by the community, admired by many. How scared and childlike he appeared in this situation. How unsettling it was to see him disoriented. Part of me wanted to hug him, crouched pitifully, looking so unsure and shaken. The maternal instinct in me activated, torn between hurt and protective nature, to help those close to me when they suffer. But the words I repeated themselves like a banner ad. I'm just not proud of her. 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 Finally, I said it. I read everything. I hissed. I read your whole fucking CHAT GPT. His face changed instantly. He looked stricken, horrified, instantly ashamed. His shoulders slumped. Oh God. No. Oh, no. And that's what followed. As you assume, with those types of chaotic situations, tears, apologies, explanations, clarifications, hours and hours of talk. He reiterated he did care about me. that this was relationship anxiety, that it was more nuanced than it looked, which I'm sure is all true, that he had been confused, scared, and trying to sort it out, that he was attracted to me, that he did not want to lose me, that he was sorry, and against my feminine intuition, we tried to continue dating. This is the part I probably judged myself over as much as the reading, because in my heart, I knew that night, between me violating his privacy coupled with depths of criticism he wrote, our relationship was likely unsalvageable. But there is something quite disorienting about being wounded by someone and then immediately witnessing their anguish over hurting you. It blurred the edges of my reality. It turned pain into a shared emotional event, laying in my bed the entire weekend dissecting what had happened to me. It tempted me into mercy before I had the chance to fully recognize my own feelings and the aftermath of what this would mean. To be fair to him, he really did try after that. For the next few months, he was nothing but more attentive boyfriend, more expressive, more deliberate, kinder, more reassuring. The problem was no longer what he wrote. The problem was that I knew what he once thought. Unfiltered. I knew that beneath the affection and tenderness and the effort, there had recently been a private record in which I had repeatedly tallied and found uncertain. I knew that somewhere inside his care for me, there had been deliberation, qualification, massive hesitation. Bars, get this girl a record deal. And once I knew that, I could not unknow that. So after that, every reassurance had echoed under it. Every compliment felt slightly unstable. Every act of love arrived with the shadow of question attached. Do you mean this, or are you still trying to convince yourself? I could stomach his doubts. What I could not do was build a foundation with someone on top of them. That I was supposed to be the biggest revelation of the whole ordeal. Not that he had privately unflattering thoughts about me. I'm sure other exes have had worse. I'm fully aware of it. I too have the unkind thoughts about people I cared for, or icks. Unjustified intimacy does not erase judgment. Loving someone does not mean being blinded by their flaws. But I do think there's a difference between loving someone despite their absurdities and trying to decide whether they are on balance tolerable enough to actually choose. Okay, this goes on, and it continues to go on. A bunch of more details about her mindset, but to put a bow on this very long story, so tried to get through it as fast as possible. They did eventually break up, and this because it was always constantly playing in the back of her mind. She couldn't just erase those things that she saw in her CHAT GPT, and that is the story. Good Lord, I feel like I just spoke for like a whole TED Talk, and now we are here. Hopefully that was mildly enjoyable. Now let's talk about it, because I do think there's a lot of fascinating takeaways from this. I want to start with number one, because she did kind of address it in the beginning, because this is where we are in 2026, right, where AI is being constantly pushed and people are using it more often in their daily lives, not just like as a random Google search thing, but as somebody they can, or something that they can lean on, something that they can talk to, and something to help work through their mindset. Now, obviously, you would think those thoughts and ideas would go through a therapist, but obviously getting mental health therapists involved in somebody's lives requires money. CHAT GPT is free, and a lot of people would love to go try therapy out for the first time, or maybe go back to a therapist that they saw in the past. But unfortunately, we live in the good old United States of America. Healthcare is very unstable, and going to see a therapist requires a lot of money, and people are already struggling. So here we are, where a lot of people are probably asking ChatGPT, unfortunately, these very same questions about their relationship, and it feels like you have now, she herself acknowledges it, right? Where it's almost like she supplanted herself into this man's diary, or it's almost as if that she kind of put a webcam in his own personal therapist's office, and she's just been eavesdropping on all of his conversations. Now, what he said in there was not a good look, especially as it continued to tally, hey, not proud of you, and you're kind of fucking ugly. Like, I feel like homie already knew the answers. Maybe he should have just broken up, and instead of trying to convince yourself of loving somebody and making this thing work, you guys were only a few months in, and it's okay to both acknowledge, listen, it's just not going to work out between us because we're already trying so hard just to make it work, and we're just months into this. Now, this is the fascination to me about this entire Substack, right? Is the fact that there's such limited time between these two, but they are so willing to just continue to try this. The fact that she, obviously, emotional wreckage man, is like, please!
Please! Please! No!
Please take me back. Like, brother, Why are we on our knees begging? Once again, you have no children together. You don't have years of time together. 5 months, and this is what we're doing? Why? Why does either one of them want to go through this? This should not continue. And anytime, yes, relationship advice from a guy wearing a Gengar shirt, one earring, ridiculous mullet, and a mustache. Now I get it. Probably not the guy you should be taking advice from, but I feel from an outsider's perspective that this was just a dumb relationship to begin with. This was doomed from the very beginning, especially if you're just a few months in and you're already questioning your attractiveness to your partner. Like, that should be something that lasts a pretty decent amount of time, I think, especially if you want to continue this long term, like after, I don't know, more than 5 months. I think the idea of already being unattracted to your partner is probably a sign for you guys to be, hey, listen, don't want to say this in the wrong. Like, also, how do you say that? Hey, listen, hey, babe, listen, I just got to be honest. I know we're a few months in. You're kind of ugly. And when I look at you, it kind of turns me off. And when you get out of the shower, you kind of disgust me. So we're going to have to... There's other ways to say it. But I don't know. The idea of this relationship continuing to be like an effort is fascinating to me, especially with the limited amount of time. Now back to her kind of invasion of privacy, where I feel it's good that she was able to find this information that was eventually probably going to come out in a very horrible way in the future at some point. Like, at some point, she was probably going to be made aware or find out that, hey, maybe this man just doesn't like me at all. Like, I feel this all is building up to a potential very toxic relationship where nothing works out for either side. So maybe it was a blessing that she went through this man's CHAT GPT and invaded his privacy. But I do think that obviously that being, it still is kind of fucked that she went through his own personal diary, because I feel like, once again, this is where we are at now with ChatGPT and AIs, especially with this guy, is that he's putting all of his thoughts into this system, right? And it is kind of reading somebody's diary, or like I said, kind of eavesdropping on somebody's therapy appointment. Now, it is kind of unfair on his end to be feeding ChatGPT all the information about his girlfriend, especially if at some point he addressed like his whole name, because now ChatGPT has all this information about this lady and she didn't really give consent to that either. So that is another fascinating angle. And I do find it interesting as well that when you get into ChatGPTs, it's always going to be biased to, I guess, the user, right? As they build the algorithm between user and AI. And I do think it's interesting that the algorithm of ChatGPT was so willing to just say, you guys should probably just break up. Now, was that the right advice? It feels like it probably was, but I do wonder how it factors that in. How does ChatGPT come to the conclusion that something is worth fighting for or something is worth breaking up? Because once again, it's a robot. It's just a ChatGPT that's been absorbing information from across every Google article it's been fed. Every response has been fed by other users. So I really am fascinated how ChatGPT can come to a conclusion on whether or not people should stay together or break up. And this is fascinating. I wonder if this is going to be a bigger thing. And I also wonder kind of what other questions and conversations are going on through ChatGPT, because this story, it's relationships, but I've also seen other unfortunate scenarios where ChatGPT or other AI algorithm things, chat bots, I guess, that relationships, yes, but also where people have put information about their mental health, and then the chat slowly progresses them to think worse about themselves, and then eventually kind of leads them on to say, hey, maybe you should just end it. I don't know, there's got to be some type of protocol in place for how much we can use these as an alternative, I guess, to therapy, because it's a robot, it's internet based, it's not real, and it's unfortunate that I feel that a lot of people have turned to ChatGPT instead of maybe talking to a friend or talking to a family member or talking to a therapist, even though maybe it won't be accessible, or maybe those people don't have friends or they don't have family, and they kind of are forced with this last option that is ChatGPT, and it leads to getting broken up with. Now, lessons learned here, everybody, is number one, if you're not attracted to your partner, break up. Number two, if you're not proud of your partner, break up. Number three is it is an invasion of privacy, and I think the guy's clearly kind of a douchebag for staying in this relationship despite clearly not enjoying any aspect of this lady at all. Seems to kind of hate her guts. Why he was still committed to it, who knows? But he's kind of a dick, and Lindsey Hall kind of a dick too. But I think it is important that she kind of acknowledges it, and not even kind of, she does acknowledge, like, hey, I could see how somebody could just hate me for doing this, like all the reasons why. But ultimately it led to, I guess, the best possible outcome, which is the two breaking up. So it's almost hard to fault Lindsey for stumbling upon that. And I do think she brings up a very great question. If you were given the tools of somebody's unfiltered brain, especially if you're in a relationship with that person and you're still relatively early on, and even if it was 5 years into the relationship, I do think it's kind of like the devil on your shoulders and angel on one side. Oh, I just, I won't look at it because I respect my partner. Or I do want to look at it because I'm curious to what they have to really think. What are they going through here? Is there something that I could find that's incredibly disturbing? Is it something that it's very amazing? Like, what if this was the inverse, right? Where all the things are, man, I'm just so proud of my girl, Lindsey. How can I make my girlfriend's day better? Things like that. But unfortunately, it wasn't. These two have ended their relationship. So I'm also curious. This lady seems to have spells on a lot of men to just make them consistently. In fact, she's like, same movie, seen it already, buddy. Get your ass up. We ain't doing this, buddy. Is hilarious to me. But either way, that's the Lindsey Hall Substack. ChatGPT ending relationships, and it's fascinating to see what else the impact ChatGPT will have on certain things. I can't wait until at some point there's going to be a president and the entire speech is going to be ChatGPT, or it's going to be like, how to politely nuke a country. Thanks, chat. Anyways, what was this video? Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do those YouTube things, and hopefully this was fun. And if not, hey man, I tried. And we'll be back next week. There's 1 to 2 videos per week. We have been pretty consistent with that, which has kind of been something I'm a little proud of. A little pat on the shoulder, okay, buddy? Why do I keep saying buddy? Who knows? Either ways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.